My first assault, I was 7 years old. I then went through additional assaults when I was in high school and then in college and then after college. I used to walk around like being like, gee, I hope nobody tries to hurt me today. And like through my training in Jiu-Jitsu, I now walk around thinking, man, I hope I don't have to hurt someone today. Hi, my name is Sarah Wills. I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I am the kids coach here at Shell Shock Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm also the CEO of SprayNet Durham.
Perfect. You can look at me. Just tell me and square off toward me here with your leg and shoulders straight on.
Okay.
So to get us started, introduce this space for us. Tell me like where we are in the
Yeah.
world right now. What is this gym and why is it meaningful to you?
Yeah, so we're currently at Shell Shock Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is in Fuquay, Varina, North Carolina. This space is very important to me. I consider it a second home. And I moved here from Ohio in 2020. So I've only been here for 4 years, but Shell Shock is actually part of what drew me to North Carolina. They have a very strong program of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with wrestling and judo formulated for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They have an MMA program and Muay Thai, and increasingly we're starting to do some Sambo as well. I train under John and Sam Shell, who are both black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they have built a really wonderful culture here that both pushes you competitively and supports, empowers, and encourages you on a personal level.
And how many years have you been involved in martial arts?
I have been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 6 years. I did Muay Thai for 2, and I've been doing Sambo for almost 2 years now as well.
So give us some background on that. When did that become an interest of yours?
So I started for self-defense in 2018 after my 6th assault in Columbus, Ohio. I decided that I was sick and tired of not knowing how to defend myself. I had taken multiple self-defense classes in the past, and I was frustrated because when I actually was living out assaults, I would freeze, and I couldn't remember the things that I had been taught in self-defense classes. So I took another one, and I pulled the instructor aside at the end of class, and I was like, what do I need to do to actually defend myself? Like, what's the number one move I need to learn? And they looked me dead in the eye, and they said, you need to get your blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, okay, well, which move is that? How hard is it? And they were like, well, that's like a level in Jiu-Jitsu. And to do that, you're going to need to train at least 3 times a week for you, probably 2 years. And I was like, oh, okay. And I rearranged my life. I got a new job. I got a new set of friends. And I started Jiu-Jitsu 2-3 months later in October of 2018. And quickly fell in love with the sport, with the puzzle, with the art, with the community. It was really hard for me at first because I was very overweight. So I weighed 270-ish pounds when I first started. So I've lost 100 pounds in the last 7 years. I had gone through a motorcycle accident where I'd had a hip surgery and had to relearn how to walk, and was in a really bad relationship and was dealing with anxiety, depression, PTSD from my assaults and from several accidents I'd been through, as well as lingering injuries. I had some problems with my neck, some problems with my spine, and was going through a lot of PT, a lot of chiropractor appointments, a lot of pain medication, and several surgeries. So I was in a really dark period of my life when I started Jiu-Jitsu, and I also started therapy at that point of time. And my therapist told me, because she was there before I started Jiu-Jitsu and during and after, and she said, no matter what you do with me, you need to make sure you keep doing Jiu-Jitsu because it's obviously having such a wildly positive impact on your life. And I really firmly believe in that because it's not just the skills or the techniques or the physical ability to protect yourself. Kind of going on a little caveat there with self-defense. I compete a lot, and it's because I know that I have to practice those skills under adrenaline and under pressure and under an intense environment. And competition allows me to do that unlike the gym does. But beyond those concrete skills, it also gives you a strong social network, which I think is often lacking in today's society. So I can come into this gym and I can say hello to my close friends. I can say hello to my teammates. They can all pick up on if I'm having a hard day and give me a high five, give me an extra hug, give me a thumbs up. And you just have that from all of these different people. Like I have a bunch of male teammates that I see as brothers, and they are all so supportive and wonderful. And it's nice to have that healthy masculine around me, even if I've experienced some really negative aspects of men in the past, because it kind of gives me more hope for society and for our culture. Any healthy gym is going to be full of people who are all there because they want to get better. They want to be better versions of themselves. They want to be stronger versions of themselves. And they're okay with facing their weaknesses every time they walk into this gym. Like when you tap, you have to say, I didn't win this round. Like I didn't have what it took to win, and that's okay. And it's actually a really good thing because now I can learn, and that's what I'm really here for. And to be surrounded by so many people with that growth mindset is wildly transformative to anyone that has the grit to stick through the tough parts.
So 6 assaults, that sounds horrible, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about your life during that period and just what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, my first assault, I was 7 years old. So that was at like a church. And I then went through additional assaults when I was in high school and then in college and then after college. It was all different people, different places, different scenarios, from a fake interview to just people running up to me on the street. So for a long time, I was very frustrated and very stuck in kind of like a victim mindset because I felt like there was a big target on my back. I'm like, it's not the same situation. It's not the same scenario. It's just people want to attack me and I don't know why. And I used to walk around like being like, gee, I hope nobody tries to hurt me today. And like through my training in Jiu-Jitsu, I now walk around thinking, man, I hope I don't have to hurt someone today. Like, so really switching from victim to champion, like, and I know that that has prevented additional assaults. I was on my way to Masters Worlds this year, and I had stopped off on a long layover in Denver, and I was taking the train to see a friend of mine. And on that train at 10 in the morning was a man washing his hands and his face in Kamchatka vodka, which comes out of the plastic bottle. And he reeked of alcohol, was obviously very drunk, and he started staring at me. And I was like, I know from past experience, this guy's about to be a major problem for me. And in the past, I would have shrunk, I would have looked away, I would have tried to be invisible, and that portrays I'm an easy victim. And I didn't realize that growing up. And now instead, I squared up to him, and I just stared him dead in the eye. And in my head, I was thinking, let's go, bud. Like, do you really want to try this? And he started shrinking away and looking small and trying to be invisible. And that was just such a completely different scenario than I'd ever experienced before. So I'm pretty involved with helping to teach women's self-defense. I'm very involved with the women's program here. When I first started, it was me, Sam Shell, Julie Ferguson, and like 2 other women. And now we have more than 20, which is incredible to see that growth. And I love teaching the kids here because I can start with the girls at ages 5, 6, 7 and tell them your voice matters. You are allowed to stand up for yourself. And it's okay to make somebody feel a little uncomfortable so that you feel safe. And I think that in teaching them those mindset skills that early, that I can help them to not have to go through what I went through, where I used to sacrifice my own feelings of safety for the comfort of others. I was so worried about being rude by staring back that I portrayed that I was an easy target.
When you first started jiu-jitsu or martial arts, were there any moments where you that were maybe like triggering or scary in the sense that it was replicating?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. My first 3 months were really hard. So I'm diagnosed with PTSD. I've been medicated for anxiety and depression. When I first started Jiu-Jitsu, I was in a very small gym up in Ohio with 10, 12 people in it. Our professor, Rocky Edwards, was quite the character, very full of life, very passionate about what he did. He's also a convicted felon who served 7, 8 years for attempted manslaughter. So in my head, like, I was raised in a very conservative, right-wing Christian household. I was like told, don't shave above your knee or people are going to think a certain way about you. And so walking into a gym with a convicted felon and a bunch of big, scary MMA guys was terrifying to me. Like, I would walk in and like be hyperventilating already. I'm like, am I safe here? I don't know. And Rocky was wonderful, and all of the guys there were wonderful. And they were very, I think, bewildered sometimes, but also really understanding and supportive. They used to joke that most people start at square one, but I started at square zero. And there were several nights where if I was in a situation that was triggering for me, I would go off the mat crying. I sat in my car crying after training I don't know how many times. Sometimes I would have a flashback in the middle of practice, and my teammates were in tune enough with me that they'd be like, are you okay? Like, you don't seem okay? And I'd be like, I need to take a break. Or they'd be like, just breathe through it. Like, you're safe. Like, I'm here, not anybody else. Like, we're here to help you improve. And just being surrounded by knowing that you are safe in that environment and allowing you to work through those difficult emotions was really powerful for me. The tap in a grappling scenario is really powerful because I can at any point in time say, I'm done. Like, you can be... I was competing in Las Vegas last year at Masters Worlds at Blue Belt. And my first match, people have flown thousands of miles to get here. They've spent thousands of dollars to get here. And in my first match, my opponent was visibly intimidated. I am often very intimidating in the competition space. I have my hair in braids, like I've got my game face on, I'm ready to go. And I'm not a stranger to seeing people look intimidated by me, but something seemed a little different with her. But we went out, we slapped, we bumped, and I took her down, and she yelled. And I was like, that's weird. And you're supposed to have like a verbal tap where if you do yell or scream that the match is over. But since it was Worlds, the ref was like, continue. We continued, and as I progressed and like started to work on my pass, started to get to mount, she screamed again, and then she yelled, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this. And I was like, girl, you can tap. Like, I'm not actually trying to kill you. So she did. She was like, I'm done. And they had the medic come over, and they were like, are you okay? Did you get hurt? And she was like, no, I just don't want to be here. And she left. And she was like, I'm really sorry. But like, you can leave. Like, it's difficult to have come that far and to still leave, but it's completely voluntary, right? Like, you're not trapped, you're not stuck. And in a real life scenario, you often are. So to be able to step into that and then step out if you have to is very freeing. I haven't had to do that myself, but like in a round, like knowing that I can leave it lets me push through some emotional difficulty.
Can you talk more about seeing the positive examples maybe of aggression or masculinity, or however you would say it, like within that controlled environment, and the effect that might have?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different levels to that. One of those levels is if you have women in particular who have been taught their whole lives that they need to keep the peace. They need to make sure that they shrink so that everyone else feels comfortable, or that they need to be a people pleaser and make sure everybody else around them is okay. And they can't be okay until everyone else is okay. Teaching them that it's a good thing to take up space and to protect yourself and to fight back is a huge paradigm shift for them. It was for me. I remember in my first couple of months, my teammate Ben telling me, like, you need to fight back. Because I would just be like, it's okay, like, I'm tough, I can grit this out, I can just take whatever pain gets doled out to me in this round. And he's like, you have to fight back. And I remember thinking in my head, am I allowed to do that? And then also thinking, like, am I worth protecting? And I think a lot of women kind of have that down in their hearts, and learning, yes, I am worth protecting, and yes, it's good to protect myself is really powerful and important and translates far outside of the mat. And then also with the ability to have a healthy place to express aggression, I think is really good for humans. So like if I'm walking around in my regular day to day and somebody flicks me off as they're driving, or they cut me off while we're driving, or somebody yells at me at Starbucks or in the grocery store because of some perceived slight or something, like it's really easy for me to let that just slide off. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. Like, I deal with way bigger problems all the time. Like, and if I am frustrated, like I'm going through extreme exercise. Like I have this outlet. And I think that's especially good for the little kids. Like I'll have, especially my younger boys come in and they'll be angsty or frustrated, and now they learn how to channel those emotions into a healthy outlet, and they leave like bubbly and excited and happy. And it also gives me the opportunity to teach them to channel that and to portray that aggression in a healthy way. So I teach my kids that in competition, things get really difficult, and sometimes you might end up in a situation where things aren't fair. So we have rules within competition, we have rules within the match, we have rules on the mat, but they don't always get followed because maybe the ref didn't see it, and maybe this kid made a mistake or forgot the rule, or maybe intentionally was trying to cheat. And I tell my students that that moment is your opportunity to speak the loudest about your character. And that when things are the toughest and things are the least fair, that's when you can really show what you're made of. And we teach our kids to show honor and to show respect and to take the high road, really. So if the ref raises the wrong person's hand, or you disagree with whose hand they're raising, I teach them to, instead of throwing chairs and getting frustrated and yelling and screaming and crying, to shaking your opponent's hand, going and seeing what can I learn from that match, and moving on with your day. And I think that's going to be a vital life skill for them too, because life is not always fair. And when we get doled out with a difficult situation, instead of just throwing a fit because it didn't go the way we wanted it to go, we can look and say, what do I want to do with this situation? And showing them that that aggression portrayed in a fit is not good and is not to be celebrated. And that instead channeling it to show leadership and to show honor and to show respect is the way that I think they should go.
When it comes to being a people pleaser, can you talk about what do you think are the reasons that you develop that mindset, and how do you think about that compared to what you just described, which to me is like, I'm not going to get involved in a petty disagreement or something that's needless, right? But you don't want to go people pleasing so far as to never speak up, like you said, you can stand up for yourself. So just tell me more about like the philosophy of how you think about those things in your day-to-day life, and like where that line is for you nowadays.
Yeah. So I was the oldest of 7 kids growing up. And my dad used to travel for work. So he'd be gone for like 2 weeks at a time or so. And so it was really my mom and I, a lot of the time helping to raise all the kids.
And you had a lot of siblings? Or?
Yeah, 7. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. So I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters. And so I had to spend a lot of time trying to make sure that everything was okay in the house. And I think that's part of where the people pleasing started. And my dad was a very strong presence, and he was very stressed oftentimes. We dealt with our house burning down in 2000, and he got laid off in the same month, and my youngest sister was also born that month. So we were homeless, living in a hotel, and had lost all of our belongings, and he had no job. So I understand that that's very stressful, but he would have some emotional outbursts, and that was really difficult to deal with, and he would make us feel like we had to walk around on eggshells to make sure that we didn't set him off. So I think that that's also part of where that started. And so kind of breaking those patterns as an adult was difficult. I used to be the general manager of a Chipotle, and I learned so much in that phase of my life, because I learned that if you just keep on people pleasing, you can allow the wrong people to stay around, and that having the wrong people around can really destroy a culture that you've worked to build. And so sometimes you have to set those lines and set those boundaries for the good of everyone. And if you don't, then you're going to just get walked all over. And you being walked all over does not result in something good. And that's something that I try to impress on people in a gym concept as well. Because if you go into a gym and the vibes are off, they're probably off for a reason. Jiu-Jitsu is not a magical place where it's all honor and all respect. As I spoke about at the beginning of this interview, this place, we've built a really special culture, and I love it. And I've seen cultures like it in other places. I've trained in probably 10 different gyms across the US. But it's not present in every gym. So there are gyms where you have this like kind of black belt worship where everybody just thinks that because that person has a black belt that they should be honored and they should be respected. And that's just they're good at a sport. Like just because you're good at basketball doesn't mean you're a good person. Just because you're good at jiu-jitsu doesn't mean you're a good person. And I've often seen people try to stand up for others based on their prowess. So, for example, fight sports had a well-documented situation where, there was an article in the New York Times and everything where Cyborg, who is a very decorated black belt, who's in charge of many different an affiliation with many different gyms, had a very unsafe environment for kids and for women. So he had a black belt under him be actually charged with assault, rape, and several other major things. And instead of what the community would have preferred of kicking that guy out, saying, you have no place here, he was pretty much protected. And so that's been back and forth and in the news for years now, and it's been a major issue, and there's been a lot of fallout and a lot of frustrations from different sides because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu started on the streets of Brazil. Like it's a very aggressive sport, and the whole concept was to be able to physically overpower your attacker. And so it's very gritty by nature. And so some people are like, oh, you're watering it down. It was never about honor. It was never about respect. It was about superiority and physical prowess. And so you kind of have two camps that are like, but we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. And then you have people who are like, why should I conform to your moral code because you want me to? And so I tell people all the time to be careful about the gyms that they do go into. So some green flags that I tell people to look out for are a variety of individuals that attend. So if you see young kids, you see women, especially upper belt women, because that means that they have stayed in that environment. You see old men, you see young men, you see like supercut athletes, you see guys with gray hair, especially if you see old women, like that's such a green flag. Like this is probably a good place. If people are all looking the same, like it's all guys who are 20 to 30 and all like trying to murder each other every single time. And when you say no, you don't feel like your no is respected, like I would recommend staying on guard and maybe finding somewhere else. So it's difficult because people are people, and you're gonna have bad apples in jiu-jitsu, you're gonna have bad apples at Chipotle, you're gonna have bad apples walking down the street. There's no place that gives you a magical escape from any of that, but you can have a strong culture that keeps that kind of stuff in check. So like here, and at many other gyms, if you have like new people come in and their whole point of being here is just to hurt someone, they're not gonna last. Because we joke that it's mat enforcers. So if I see somebody and they are, I don't know, a guy in his mid-30s who's really athletic and he is just molly-whopping my 16-year-old student, he's gonna go with me next. And I'm not gonna be gentle and let me explain this to you. I'm gonna be like, hey, how's it feel to be treated like a doll? And most of the time, guys that are here just to feel powerful aren't going to stay, because you have to face your weaknesses if you're going to continue on your jiu-jitsu journey. And people that just want to feel powerful aren't going to want to feel weak. They aren't going to want to tap. They aren't going to want to say to someone smaller and weaker than them, that was a really great technique. Can you talk me through that? Can you teach me? Like, they're not going to humble themselves. And so oftentimes they'll just leave, because it's clear that this culture doesn't allow that. There are other cultures that are like, okay, you tried to hurt somebody and you hurt them. Good job. And that's not what we're about, and that's not what the majority of jiu-jitsu is about. But that does exist. So.
Is there anything else that you think is just important to share about any of these topics?
I could talk about jiu-jitsu for years. But I think that it's important to give it a try and to keep trying. It's really difficult. Your first time starting in jiu-jitsu, you feel like you are drinking from a fire hose. It's going to be overwhelming, and that's fine. And something that I teach my new students is that you're not going to get immediately better overnight. And what you can focus on is a couple of things. One, focus on getting 1% better every day. Anybody can improve by 1%. But if you add that 1% up over the course of a year, you're going to be 365% better than you were at the beginning of the year. And that's just 1%. Imagine if you improved by 3% every day, right? So everybody can get a little bit better every day, and that will compound over the years in a dramatic fashion. So don't put these unrealistic expectations on yourself that you should learn the move the first time you see it, or that you should be able to take out the black belt. What these people have been training for 15 years, The other thing that I would say is to encourage, again, that growth mindset. So just focus on growing, and that means to compare yourself to yourself. Don't compare yourself to the brand new guy that was a D1 wrestler before this and is progressing really fast. Compare yourself to you from a year ago. Are you a better person than you were a year ago? Could you beat yourself up from a year ago? That's where your comparison needs to be. It's easy for me to fall into that trap. Sometimes I compete against people and they've been training since they were 6. I started when I was 28. I lost 100 pounds. I've been through 6 surgeries and 6 vehicular accidents and all these assaults. And I've been through this huge mental health journey, and they don't have that behind them. Everybody has something behind them, but I'm not comparing apples to oranges or apples to apples when I'm comparing myself to an adult phenom who only has to train every day. And so it's easy to fall into that trap. And I would encourage people to look at comparing themselves to themselves instead of comparing to others.
Great.
The other thing I would say is to invest in others. Get in here and you're going to learn. And then when you get to a point where you start to feel comfortable, give it back. I tell my kid students a lot, my gray belts, so they've been here for a year or so. When we have a new kid, I'm remember how you felt on your first day? Help them have an easier first day than you had. What can you do to make the world better today? And that's going to be in the interaction I'm having with you, or the interaction that I have teaching class tonight. It's not in these grand, phenomenal schemes all the time. Sometimes it's just in the single conversations you have within your day.
Thank you for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.